Welcome to Gut Punch, the podcast that explores life-changing moments. Hosted by Kathryn Lancioni, a seasoned educator with personal insights into resilience. Kathryn shares how life can change in an instant, shaping our path forward. Each episode features inspiring guests who face their own gut punch moments. Guests share their journeys through loss, upheaval, and triumph. What to expect: honest conversations, lessons in resilience, inspiration for growth. Join Kathryn as she highlights courage and perseverance in every story. Gut Punch is a reminder that there is always a path forward. Be part of the conversation. Register now to join Kathryn for today's journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gut Punch podcast. My name is Kathryn Lancioni, and I'm the host of the show. Today, I'm delighted to have Sandra Menzies on as our guest for today's conversation. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I really appreciate you taking the time. So before we get into your gut punch, I'd appreciate it if you could share a little bit about your background with us.
Sure. I grew up in a small town in Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and I moved up here to Maryland in the United States right after I graduated from college. And I was the first person of my generation to graduate from college and move away from home. And I worked in pharmaceutical companies for the FDA. I did a lot with quality systems and project management for about 35, 40 years. In that time, I spent some time becoming a massage therapist. In addition, I became and taught yoga and became a life coach. And I now have a professional certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. That's about where I'm at right now. It's kind of a general story about me, my career journey.
Love that. And I am someone who recently went through the ICF framework and of course study and understand it's a tremendous program. You learn so many great things about yourself, I have to say, just by going on that journey. Anyway, well, thank you for being on the show, like I said. So let's get right into it. What was your gut punch?
Well, as I said, I worked for the pharmaceutical industry, and then I got a job with the Food and Drug Administration. And about 3 years ago, I retired, and I'd spent some time, since I'd already become a life coach, trying to think about what does it mean to retire. And I'm on the younger side. I'd always talked about trying to retire around age 50. And then I realized I was past that. And I wanted to spend some time trying to enjoy my second half of life or my next chapter. So it was really more meaningful to me. And as I'm doing this here, so I left my job and realized then after 6 months that I was sitting in front of my computer every day pretending to work because I didn't have a lot of activities. And that result, it was so daunting for me, because one of my mottos has always been that I want to live every day and I don't want to exist. I saw so many residents. My first job was working in a nursing home as a certified nursing assistant. And I had residents in there who were in beds or in wheelchairs for 10, 15, 20 years, and they were existing every day. And I'm like, I do not want to be there. I don't want to exist. You're only on this earth for a short period of time. And here I am existing. I'm sitting here just kind of spinning my wheels to feel like I'm being valuable by just doing one thing after another. That was kind of like what I'd done for the last 35 years, except I didn't have an employer.
Well, yeah, it's just interact. And I feel that, because I agree with you, I've seen so many people that you just do that, because it was your cadence, it was your rhythm for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years.
Uh-huh.
So it's just what you do. And, the challenge is you don't have to do it anymore, but then you also don't know what else you can do or you should do, or, because it's all you've ever done. And, retirement or career pivots are supposed to be this amazing, liberating thing. Well, they are, but if you don't know where to take that energy, it's pretty lonely, I think.
It is definitely. So I actually started challenging myself. So I try to set up 3 friend dates a week
I
whether
love
it's to go for a walk or this or that. I'm taking a new class. So I'm like, what are the things that have always struck me of interest? And I've challenged myself to to go out and do those, whether it's learning to play an instrument or dance or taking and learning a new skill, whether it's a knowledge skill or whether it's a physical skill. So, and then not just learning, but also how can I take that learning and transition it into a way where I am building community, where I'm interacting with others, where I'm challenging myself each day to be my best. So it means that I'm having to spend time looking inward and focusing on me so that when I go out and meet with others, I'm showing up in a way that really honors the relationship with everyone.
I love that. And what I was thinking as you were saying this is like, if you rewind the tape of life, like to when we were little, all the things that we did that were passions or hobbies or what you did after school was all because you tried something new. Right. And, and sometimes it was because your mom, gently pushed you. Other times it was because it was something that your friend was doing. Or maybe it was just kind of like innate curiosity. But then fast forward to like retirement age or career pivots or any of those things where you have that chance to do something new. It's almost like you have to dig deep inside and think
Uh-huh.
and be curious about yourself, right? And
Right.
think about, gosh, what is that like? What is that list? What are the things that I've always wanted to do? And that sounds like that's exactly what you did, right?
It is, and it's something that I continue because it's like I call it the artichoke onion because we want to peel back layers, but
Yeah.
sometimes it causes tears, which is kind of your onion. But when you get to the middle of the onion, all you have is nothing. But when
Yeah.
you get to the middle of the artichoke, you have the heart. And so that's why I like to peel back to get to my heart, my true self, and whether or not it's prayer or meditation, but looking inward to you as giving space for you to be with yourself and being around individuals who are going to encourage and challenge and support you as you are growing and developing. And that's one of the reasons I also put together a process called SURF for helping to navigate transitions.
Okay.
Because in every phase of a transition, you have an ending. And then you have this middle phase where you have all these possibilities. It's kind of like a blank slate and that you get to fill out. And then once you figure out what that new thing might be, and it might not just be one thing. That's the thing in this phase is that sometimes it's a lot of different things that have your interest that kind of have waxes and wanes depending on the time of year and your interest and being more attuned to where you are in your life. And so then you have new beginnings coming up. And so the surf methods allows you to say goodbye. And so if you're at an ending, it might be to what was. Saying goodbye and you're in that middle area, this is where you're kind of like exploring this and you might be saying goodbye to it and you're exploring this one and then you're saying goodbye. So it's a lot of different little goodbyes and a little introductions as you explore different activities, different ways of being, different thoughts. So kind of thinking about what are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What comes up for me from an intuition? What's happening in my physical body as you're moving through this? As you get to that new beginning, then saying goodbye to that state of constant flux and allowing you to move forward. The you is kind of understanding where you are in each of those phases and updating it versus what you think you could have or what was and focusing on what is and then a little bit looking forward as what could be. And then as you get into that R, which is releasing or reframing. So depending on, sometimes we just need to let things go. So shaking it out, doing rituals to let things go, reframing your mindset, your beliefs. And sometimes it means that you have to change your physicality to change your mindset, your words. Everything is linked together in us and around us. And then as you go forward, that F is the follow through or the way forward and being able to come up with smart goals and actionable plans that allow you to take steps so that you are moving toward where you want to go. And then again, you can circle back and to saying goodbye and moving you through this process, because even though you're on a path and you're like, I'm going to go here, life might make that as a change for you. As you know, Kathryn, sometimes health, other things might get in the way, and that you might be going here and life might say, no, I want to take you here. And understanding what that means for you right now.
Well, yes. And I know from my own personal experience that I've shared with you, like life is not a straight path. It's a series of twists and turns. And I think sometimes the turn is a lot harder than we realize. But there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always a silver lining. But
Mhm.
sometimes it is hard to find that. And it is, sometimes the light is like like, sometimes it's a bright candle, and sometimes it feels like it's the candle where the wind is kind of blowing on it, if you want to give it that analogy. And you have to look really hard to keep the flame going, but you somehow, you do if you let yourself. That's one thing that I've seen in having conversations with people is there's so much uh, with all of this, with moving on, transitioning through a tough time, making the decision to pivot, that there's so much that is focused on or linked to giving yourself permission, right?
Right.
In your work with clients, for people that are just stuck, how do you encourage them to give themselves permission to move on?
Sometimes I've had some clients who've come to me and just verbally saying, you have permission. It's like a light bulb that goes on inside them and saying, I can give myself permission. And they do. Others want, and that's why the plan, having a plan, an action step,
Yep.
and it needs to be small enough that you can truly do it. Another thing I also challenge, and I'll be starting another one on a regular basis, but actually putting challenges together. So one of them that I'll be starting in early 2026 and running throughout 2026 is, I call it Finding You, where
Okay.
you take some time to actually brainstorm and think about where you are in your life. And then what is an object that sort of symbolizes that for you? And then
Okay.
we're going to take that object to a rage room and break it. And then collect your pieces. And then we're going to take some time for you to reflect on what that felt like and what that means for you. And then we're going to rebuild it into something for you to take as a symbol for your way forward.
So you're shattering the mold.
Yeah. And it's whatever that symbol might be for
Yeah.
you. It could be a bowl, it could be a picture, it could be a piece of clothing, or like your
Yeah.
high heel shoes, whatever is something that symbolizes for you. Let's break it. Let's go in and just hammer away at it to get it off of you.
Okay.
And then let's
It's
take
not gonna be
those
too
pieces,
expensive.
and then depending on what those are, we can
Yeah.
rebuild it. Whether or not you take the pieces and you put it onto into a frame and make something else. If you use some thread and a needle and you make a bow or a pincushion out of it. If it's a bowl, there's the Japanese technique of using gold to
Yeah.
reform. But what is it reforming that in a way? Because we can't let go of we can not let go of our past, but we can reframe our past in a different way for our future. And when we've had challenges or traumas that's happened to us, we can't say it didn't happen. But what we can say is, I've survived it.
Yes.
I am stronger now. I have a different empathy for others who are going through things. Instead of going, oh, it's woe is me, letting go of that woe is me and saying, okay, what can I do to move forward from a place of strength and presence and being?
Yes. And building on what you're saying, don't your past events, whether positive or negative, should not define you, right?
Mhm.
They empower you, but they shouldn't define you. I was in a conversation on earlier this week on mid-career pivots, and I was talking to two women that had transitioned beautifully through various, career things. And one of them said something which I thought was just so incredibly important, was like, your credentials should not define you. She was a trained lawyer, and what she is doing now is very far from the law field for what she was trying to go into. And I just thought that was such a great saying. And I think, how that applies here is like your past experiences should not dictate who you're going to be in that next third or another third of your life. Like they're collective experiences through
Mhm.
which you've learned stuff about yourself, about humanity, and about a lot of other things. But they're not who you're going to be. They're not predicting out, okay, you can only be this type of person. But I feel like so many people put themselves in a box, right? And because they've done XYZ, they can only do XYZ. And so back to, retirement, right? Where people just decide to pause in life. It doesn't have to be retirement. And they're like, well, gosh, all I've ever done is all I've ever done is had this career. And
Mhm.
therefore I'm not qualified to do anything else. And like, that's not true.
I encourage people to actually take an inventory of what are your skills, what are your abilities, what is your knowledge, what are challenges you faced as you are seeking a new opportunity. If you're transitioning into another field, I call it, do you want to stay on a ladder? Do you want to climb up? Do you want to climb down? Do you want to switch ladders or climb off? So as you think about there's many different ways you can go, whether you're just starting or you're getting to the end of your career. I know some individuals are close to the end of the career and they're like, I like where I'm at. Others are saying, I still want to go up a couple of rungs. And then I've known others who have said, I've been doing this job for 30 years and I want to switch and start doing this. But
Yeah.
what does that take? And it takes a real honest stock of what do you have and then what do you want to do as you move forward. And I was chatting with a colleague earlier this week, and she says she gets together with other coaches, and
Yeah.
they actually do an assessment of what are the trends that are happening in the world, and then what are the knowledges and the skills and the abilities do I need to allow me to prepare for those trends. A few years ago, I was offering a training to the community on what does it mean to transition into retirement. And
Okay.
this one participant came up and said, I work as a graphic artist, and what it takes me 2 days to do, it takes AI 2 minutes. And I said, okay, so what are you doing to prepare? And he's like, this individual says, I don't want to do anything. I'm hoping that they don't let me go before I need to retire 3 years from now. And I'm like, is that reasonable? And they're like, no, it's not. And I'm like, well, then what do you want to do about it? And they're like, I don't want to do anything. And so until you're at a point where you are ready to start taking leadership of you and your life, your career should support the life you want to live instead of you living to support your career.
Yes.
And so, what does that balance look like? What does it mean for you? And as you're working forward in your career, is being aware of what are the trends, what are that next new thing, and is it something that you want to take action in, or is it something you want to pivot in a different way? For right now, we're hearing a lot about AI, and is it generative AI? Is it predictive AI? Is it this? Is it that? And coaching, they're saying, is going to take over. AI will take over a fair bit of coaching. But just like the teddy bear that came out in the newspaper the other week, where the teddy bear is telling kids about what they want to hear or telling them things that they don't want to hear. It's sometimes there needs to be more than just guardrails in the AI as it's established. And we as individuals have to be discerning. Is this not just reasonable, but is it reasonable for me?
Well, that's right. That's right. And I think you get to a point in your career
Mhm.
where you've realized what you love and you've realized what you don't love, what you hate. And I think it's important to recognize that we're not all great at everything, right? Or else we'd all be doing the same thing. So as you say, you take that kind of mid-career stock. Okay, like this is the stuff that I've done and this is the stuff that I've really enjoyed. And let's
Mhm.
put that on this list. And then that other stuff that I didn't really enjoy or that stuff that I didn't find fulfilling or that stuff that sucked all the energy out of me until I, just wanted to sleep, like put that stuff on the shelf. And selfishly, when you get mid-career, you take a career break or whatever, that's the time to try to figure out, okay, how can I focus on the stuff that I love,
Right.
right?
And
So good.
that's one of the reasons why the biggest number of entrepreneurs are individuals over 50, because they have a lot of skills and knowledge and abilities. that they really want to take and give back. And so they're framing out, they're building up, and they're saying, okay, here's what I can share to individuals as they're developing themselves, helping with that career and that developing that pipeline for organizations so that their next leaders are being formed in a way that is supportive of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I think so if there's someone that's listening to our conversation and they have, and maybe they're late 40s, early 50s, and they have an idea for a company, or they have an idea for a coaching business or whatever, but they're scared.
Mhm.
Which, because a lot of in speaking with people, what I hear a lot of is, well, all the reasons they shouldn't do something, right? I can't do that. I can't do this, right? So if you have someone, if you have someone listening, here's my question, who has an idea, but is telling them all the reasons why, how do you suggest they change their mindset? What are some ideas you have?
Honestly, the only way someone can change their mindset, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. And it's just doing it. I make a list of 3 things every evening of what I want to do the next day. It's the biggest 3 things that I can do. It might take me 5 minutes to do them. It might take me 3 hours to do, but I make it into bite-sized chunks, but doing one step after the other to move me forward. Because if you do nothing, in a year from now, you are exactly where you were.
Yeah.
But if you take even baby steps forward, little itty bitty steps forward, you will be at a completely different place 1 year
Yeah.
from now. You might not know exactly what that will look like. I like to think about, I was in project management, and agile was, you knew I wanted something different.
Right.
I wanted something to address this question, but I didn't know what it would look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so agile says, okay, I'm going to make a little plan, and then I'm going to do a little bit, and then I'm going to reassess and pivot based on what I learn
Right.
and and so you keep developing. But with agile project management, you're usually working toward a particular project. But within you and for your career, as you're trying to develop something, you go a little bit and you test. So marketing, testing with developing of things, of talking with people, of going out into your community or live stream, getting others to hear and give you feedback on what you're planning and what you're doing so that you can see what resonates with people and what is something, that others want. There is the ikigai, which is the Japanese concept of living a fulfilled life.
Right.
And it goes in and says, okay, what are you good at? And it's not, you know, it's so you can be good at things. And then what do you love? And that intersects. And then what does the world need? And then
Yeah.
what can you be paid for? And the thing is that when you are transitioning, depending on what the phase of your life you are at, what you can be paid for doesn't necessarily need to be money.
That's very
Because
true.
some people are at a phase of their life where they're like, I have prepared and I don't need money. But as I'm looking through this, I want it to be meaningful. I just don't want to sit in a chair all day. I just don't want to go out and volunteer to volunteer for volunteer's sake, but I want it to be meaningful to me. And what does that mean to you? And getting very clear on what that means.
Well, yes, and I think too, like as we evolve from
Mhm.
out of college, out of grad school, like early stage professionals to mid career to later career, this kind of goes with what makes you happy, and then
Mhm.
how do you define success?
Mhm.
And I think both of those are fluid, both of those definitions. I don't know. I don't think I've met anybody in all my travels everywhere and my coaching and my teaching whose definition of success hasn't changed, and usually it starts on a very money focused, most people, not everybody, but most people start on a very money focused thing. And then they realize that that is not where fulfillment comes from, and it comes from, mental stimulation. I remember I had this experience. It was when I was still working in PR for an agency. And we'd done a huge PR campaign around a company going public. And the CEO, we made him a billionaire that day. And I remember he was so happy, like so happy. And I was kind of, I don't know, I'm not going to say emotionless, but I was just kind of like, okay, this campaign's done. Let's move on to the next one. I was very unfulfilled, right?
Mhm.
As I had done so much for him, but the joy of what I had done for him did not translate into the joy it gave myself.
Right.
And I remember thinking, like, I can't do this forever. Like, I love my team. I love where I'm working because I did love where I was working at the time. But I didn't love what the future of that career brought me.
Mhm.
And so I pivoted, into something else. And it was not a complete redirect. It was kind of I went
Mhm.
corporate. I went on to the client side. And that changed. That changed, and because I loved what I did, but I didn't love in the capacity that I was doing it, right? And I loved the corporate side. And yeah, it was scary. And I think, for me, it was I had gone from working in a team structure to I had this epiphany one day when I was on the corporate side. I'm like, wait, I'm the only person here that actually understands PR. Like, that's awesome. And it's also scary as all heck. I let myself get over that. As you were saying earlier, I gave myself permission to be
Mhm.
scared and then to be okay with being scared. And then kind of just dove into the pool as far as the job and
Right.
learned how to swim, as they say. Uh, and there was such fulfillment that came from learning how to swim. And that, and I always say that when something becomes routine, for me, it's time to pivot. And when something is scary, it's usually the right thing to do. And I know my own personal mantra has always been like, when an opportunity comes along, you just got to peek. It doesn't mean you got to open the door all the way, but you got to peek because, as you were saying before, life is short.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, get to some point in your career and look back and have your career or your personal life filled with a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Right.
So back to your whole surf framework. How do people start? Like, how do people, how do you get people to even begin that journey?
People have to be ready. And so when someone is feeling, I know that there's something more, I know there's something different, and I'm not sure what that next step is, then when they come, we actually talk about assessing where they are and then beginning with what does it mean to say goodbye? I'd put together a pre-retirement coaching program, and I worked with leaders within a federal agency who preparing within 5 years to retire. And some of them, when we started, were thinking, oh, I'm just going to take what I'm doing now and just move it outside of the federal service. And when I started challenging them, what, is this the life you really want to be leading? A lot of them are like, no, I actually want to spend more time with family. I want to spend more time with activities, more things that are meaningful to me. And when we took that step back to look at their life, then we could, when you define the life you want to live, then you have to say goodbye to that. Maybe it's that title, maybe it's that position, maybe it's how you see yourself in that position or within that organization. And doing some kind of reflection and ritual and allowing that to let you go. So if you take a moment and just think about what are the things that mean most to you, and if you put them on a piece of paper and list each one on a piece of paper, and then take and look at, here's one, and then take and ball it up and throw it away, and notice what does it feel like to feel that as a sense of self, as identity, and then what does it feel like to let it go?
Yeah.
And then for your next one, do that and notice what does it feel like when you're taking these things off? And I see this as an imagining what your future self may feel like without those. So as you say goodbye, giving yourself permission to experience that goodbye, because there's grief here. Sometimes when you have consciously made the decision, sometimes there's anger, or it's almost those different stages of grief that are coming out. You might go, should I stay? Should I continue to do this? Because you don't want to go into the unknown. Our brains are so good at keeping us in the safe, in the narrow, to keep us on this path. And when we can actually take that time to in that next, opportunity to start saying, this is a possibility, our brains go, it's new, it's different.
Yeah.
Are you going to be safe? And sometimes we have to go, yes, acknowledging that we're scared, we're afraid, but that we will be safe. We will be okay
Right.
as we take those steps.
Right.
And then as you get into that understanding method, really reflecting, I'm now in grief. I'm in anger. I'm in this phase where my mind is saying, no, you can't. And I'm going to say, yes, I can.
Yes.
And I encourage people to look in a mirror as you're doing this and put your affirmations around your mirror and look at yourself straight in the eye and say, yes, I can. I am. And name what that is you want to do, become, feel. Because each of us have the agency to be our best self if we choose to take it, and giving ourselves that permission. And I think this sometimes with younger individuals, what I hear is younger individuals are they've had lots of jobs, they've had lots of experiences, but they're not getting that next position, that next thing. And sometimes you have to go and start exploring and being your own advocate. You can't wait for someone to recognize you, but actually say, these are the things I'm doing to help you as an organization, to help me as an individual, to be here in this. But then also having those clear boundaries of what you want versus what do you not want. And when you can understand yourself in that capacity, you can be in a much better space. And then as you reframe or release, rituals, letting go. I love shaking things out and, just kind of like a dog letting things go
Sure.
because, shaking that water off. But when we can do that, it releases the energy inside of us because so frequently we are taught, especially as women and in the US, to shove down, to hide, to not go out of the norm.
Right.
And when we are trying to be that next best self, sometimes we just have to shake things up and let it go to say, yeah, that is that old belief. That's that old saying. And then reframing that as, now what? How do I want to show up? What is that next step?
Yeah.
And then follow through, actually take that next step, whether
Yes.
it's joining a podcast, whether it is putting marketing out, it's calling someone that you haven't talked to in 20 years and saying, I'm now doing X. Do you know of anyone who
That's right.
might be needing this particular service? Or is this something that I can share with you or your organization? Making the steps and then seeing what happens.
Well, you just gotta have to put it out there.
Mhm.
I know. Well, there's two things I wanted to say. One is when you were talking about the whole shaking thing, it reminds me, when I was a little kid or my kids were little, like you would have a dance party, right? And the idea would be you would just like shake it off, and you could just like, moms do with their kids, like get the sillies out or the craziness out, and like there's something to that, and I think as adults, whether it's a guy or a girl, like, you're supposed to evolve in a certain way. There are certain things you're supposed to do. And that's not the case. Like as Gen Z says, like you do you,
Mhm.
and you do you in the way that you feel that you should do you. And don't ask permission to be something that you want to be. And the second thing I'll share is just like about this podcast. And I started this because I could, right?
Mhm.
And I did it because some people that listen to the first part of this first season one know is, I survived a absolutely horrible, bacterial systemic death thing. And there was a nurse in a hospital who said, God chose you.
Mhm.
And that was a lot. And I did a blog post about what I had been through. Then I did a webinar about what I had been through. And both of those were very well received, but neither of them was enough for me. Like I needed to do something else to live up to what that nurse said. So I figured, I don't know, I was trained as a journalist. Let me start a podcast. And let me like bring on people who I know or people that I meet, like you, Sandra, who have just like, I don't know, either amazing stories or amazing ideas, or maybe amazing stories and amazing ideas. And let me just talk to them and
Mhm.
learn. I get to talk to everybody. So I get to learn so much. But also that let people share with other
Mhm.
people. And it is incredible how by just doing this, how it's forget about me, how it's helping other people. And that is an unexpected pleasure, an
Right.
unexpected gift that I've gotten from doing this. And maybe this is the silver lining that I was looking for after what I went through. I don't know. But I do know that if you had asked, if I had, it would have been a lot easier to come up with all the reasons that I couldn't do this. Right. But, after what I've been through, I don't ask permission for anything, for anything anymore.
Yeah.
And I think I love what you're suggesting, because I feel like these days we are all just running 150 bazillion miles an hour.
Mhm.
And we're, I guess it's called the portfolio lifestyle. Like no one has, I mean, I don't know anybody that just has one job anymore. Like everybody has a job and then another job and then a side hustle and a passion project, and it all weaves together. So we just go from thing to thing to thing to thing. And the one gift that my whole health journey gave me at the time was it forced me to pause in a way that I know I was really not a very patient person before this whole thing happened. And I have learned to really respect the concept of patience and learn to respect the concept of being kind to yourself, right? And I think that in our chasing for things, we're on this treadmill of just going, 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 going. And we don't exactly know what we're looking for. We don't know what we're chasing after,
Yeah.
because society dictates that we're supposed to do this. But when you have an event, whether it's a health thing, a job thing, a personal thing, a thing, just when you have a thing that forces you to stop and pause, it also stops you to force and think. And as you're saying, you realize that you have the power to let yourself evolve. You have the power to let yourself move on if you recognize it.
Exactly. And some of that, just like I said, I had to set up friend dates for myself when I
Yeah.
realized I was sitting here in front of the computer and trying to be productive. And I'm like, being productive is all about doing. And when I set up the friend dates, and then I set up a time for me to pray and meditate, to nurture myself spiritually, to nurture myself with new knowledge, and actually block time on my calendar as me time, but not thinking about it as doing, but thinking about it as supporting me as a human being instead of a human doer. And those breaks allows me to realize I'm not finding inspiration. So maybe I need to go and exercise. Maybe I need to talk with a friend and have one of those honest conversations, because sometimes we have those friends and it's a superficial conversation.
Yes.
But having those conversations, and similar to what we're talking about now, that gets deeper into who you are and how you want to show up, and challenging. You say something and they're like, "What'd you really just say? Is that really what you meant?" And whether or not it's a friend, a coach, a therapist, but finding someone you can have those honest conversations with that will help you realize what's going on and how are you living your life. I've done spiritual direction, and someone listening to you from a spiritual component, therapy, coaching. As a coach, I need my own coach to help me stay focused and moving forward. And it's having that support system, because in a transition, a lot of people out there make it look like it's easy. But just like when you were in the hospital, in the hospital bed, you weren't there healing on your own. You had a whole team of doctors and nurses and support people and people cleaning, and then throughout your whole journey, you had a whole team.
Yes.
And that's where we forget that we are not islands. We are trees in a forest. We are part of, and we can be an individual tree or we can be part of a forest. And realizing that forests, trees can talk to each other, we can all integrate to be our best selves each and every day.
I think I don't even know what to say, except that's amazing. And I think that's a great place to end, to conclude. It's all about the community. It really is.
Mhm.
Sandra, thank you so much. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
They can reach out. My email is Sandy, SANDY, at Sandra Menzies, SANDRAMENZIES.com. Or they can go to my website, which is sandramenzies.com.
Wonderful. And they can also find you on LinkedIn.
Yes, I'm also on LinkedIn
Wonderful.
and
Well,
Facebook.
all those socials. Anyway, thank you so
Yes.
much. I really
Okay.
appreciate you you coming on, and I'm just so thankful that we met. So appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a good weekend.
You too.
And thank you everyone to listening to another episode of the Gut Punch podcast. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
That's it for today's episode of Gut Punch. I hope you found inspiration, because no matter how hard life hits, there's always a way forward. Make sure to follow or subscribe to Gut Punch on your favorite podcast platform. If you know someone who could use a little inspiration, share this episode with them. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay strong. See you in the next episode.